Hello, welcome back to another lesson. So today's lesson isn't one that you can really apply to your photography right now, but it is something that I want to make you aware of and start to think about at the start of your journey rather than like midway through it, because it will really help accelerate your direction moving forward. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about style, another one of my favorite things to talk about in photography and actually just in creativity in general as well. Now, once you've gone through the basics and you've matured quite a bit and you've reached a high level of skill in any creative field, not just in photography, the thing is, everyone gets to a very similar level of technical skill. Everyone gets to roughly about, 80% of the same skill level in anywhere between 3 to 6 years, depending on how good you are. And you see this in pros. Most pros of any creative field will be able to teach you roughly the same skill set. And I've seen this countless of times over and over again in many creative fields that I've been a professional in, not just in photography. Now, when you get to that point, sure, there's still refinement to be had from a skill set perspective, but the growth rate is much slower than it was from 0% to 80%. And it takes some people just as long to get from 80% to 85% as it does for them to get from 0 to 80%. And so a lot of the journey from 80% and onwards to mastery is a lot less about technical skill and a lot more about style, because if everyone ends up with a similar level of technical skill at the 80% mark, then what's the difference between them? Style. And this makes a tremendous amount of sense, especially if you understand what style truly means. And there's a huge misconception about what true style is. People throw the word around super casually like it's something that can just be attained by anyone at any time. But the difference between what the zeitgeist definition of style is, like what everyone thinks it is, versus what true artistic style is the difference between someone looking at an art piece and writing it off as something they could do with a blindfold on or something that a 2-year-old could do versus the artist that spent 10,000 hours honing their craft to be able to get it to such a beautiful, simple point in the first place. There is a huge difference between the two. Breaking through this gigantic cultural ignorance of what style is perhaps one of the hardest parts about talking about it, but I guess that's also why I love talking about it so much and educating people on a different perspective to think about style in a more progressive manner. It's something that I'm super aware of in my own practice now in mastering photography, and it is something that I'm super aware of that I have used in my past careers, my past creative careers as well, and it's something that I'll continue to think about for as long as I die a creative. So let's talk about style and what it is exactly. If I had to sum it up in one simple to remember but hard to understand sentence, it would be that style is an expression of you as you are in this moment. And what I mean by that is that your style is the current method of how you visually express things, with all of the baggage of your emotions, your moods, your history, your experiences, your triumphs, your heartaches, your skill sets, and your current level of visual language fluency to express all of that with. Style is not a destination. It's not something that you just suddenly reach. Much like a millionaire overnight success is never actually truly overnight. Rather, style is an expression of you as you are right now. And therefore, when we think about style, it's not something that we should be wishing to obtain. You shouldn't aim to have style, you already have it. Rather, it's better to think of style as something that you build, something that you can break down into sizable chunks and learn and work on over time. When you have the visual language literacy to be able to express your current emotions or traumas or preferences or tendencies, man, you've got some fire to play with. And that's what we're seeing in the observation of other artists' works. And I mean real artists. I don't mean regular people who pretend that they make art or can make art or just people who make content. I mean real people who have spent thousands of hours honing their craft, perfecting their brushstrokes, training their eyes, refining their tastes. what you see is the confluence of their experience in a singular piece of work. You see the visual patterns they use, the frames, the contrast, the color. You see the mediums they use, photography, painting, drawing. You see the restraint of deliberate choice and intention. You see how it expresses the emotions they felt or the message that they're trying to say. When a non-artist looks at a piece of visual art, it's easy to say, yeah, I could have done that as well. And yeah, sure, they probably could have if they too went through the thousands of hours of process it took for the original artist to reach that idea and execute it in that way in the first place. Most people don't have the creative experience to make the creative associations to come up with that style or that idea in the first place. And that's because style is unique. It's the unique combination of everything that you know right up until this point in time, which is why for really well-practiced artists, it's very, very difficult for newer artists to replicate those styles because they just don't have the experiences to come to the same conclusion with. And that's why a random person can physically copy an artwork after it's shared and out in the world, but they could never actually come to the same conclusion and create that original piece for themselves unless they've gone through the extensive process of building up that style and experience and getting to that point in the first place. Okay, but why is this rambling important? Well, even though earlier on I mentioned that style is really one of those things that gets focused on quite acutely once people reach a certain level of technical skill, it's also something that you can start to work on and have a focus on now. And it's also something you probably would want to have a grasp on at the very start of your journey because you would have then had a lot longer in terms of time thinking about it than the next photographer over from you. And know this, in your first few years, the first 3 years of your photography at least, everything is your style. The problem is that you don't actually know what you don't know. You might think you like a certain genre of photography or a certain technique, and that's totally fine. But until you've gone out there and sampled every genre and every technique, how can you truly know that this is the right one to settle on? Before you truly understand the entire breadth of what photography has to offer, isn't stopping to settle at one singular thing just a little bit misguided and a little bit forcefully ignorant? I personally think so. So my recommendation when it comes to style when you're first starting out is to actually try as many things as possible with the intention of assessing whether or not you could see yourself pursuing those different things for a very long period of time. Now, this long period of time is important and we'll cover that in a moment. But when you're first starting out, when you're first trying something, say you are diving into street photography for the first time, immerse yourself in it fully for a long period of time. Learn everything that you can learn about it over a year and then deeply consider whether or not it is something that you consider doing for a very, very long time. And then move on to something different and start doing portraiture and start thinking about it and immersing yourself in the same way. And then do landscapes and then do architecture and do all of this until you've learned absolutely everything you want to learn in these different skill sets, because the more you learn, the more you'll start to know how much there actually is to know. Or as some people say, the more you expand your horizons. Now, all of this is really important in terms of the long game. When someone says that X person has X style, that person has received that praise not because they one day decided to make a career-defining portrait, but rather they have built a body of work over a long period of time that people have come to associate that person with. The ability to continue to express yourself in a similar way shows intention and skill. Yes, the word you keep hearing me say, intention. Having a body of work shows an intention to the messaging. The work has a clarity to it. It's succinct. It has been refined time and time again. And so because of that, no one ever reaches a style by accident. The most reliable way to reach one that people recognize as yours is to create an entire body of work in that particular style. That being said, style is an expression of who you are right now in this moment, with all of your successes and failures and annoying character traits and things people love you for and your emotions and your skill sets, everything. And because your style is such a wide grouping of uncommon characteristics, how you express yourself can have many different manifestations as well. You can have many, many styles, but ultimately, it's just you deciding what portions of you wish to express as that style. And I think this is a really important thing to understand because, especially in photography, style is really made up of two parts: why you make the things that you make and how you make them. The how part is something that we've already discussed. It's the craft of photography, it's how you're deciding to communicate with your visual language. But the why, well, that's the art of photography. And you can see how we're, coming full circle here. When it comes to the reasoning behind why we create the things that we create, well, the good thing here is that it can be anything, so long as we decide on something and have intentionality about pursuing that thing and that reason. So when it comes to the metaphorical, take the weight off your shoulders, because as long as you're communicating effectively with the how, the why can be whatever it is that you want to be. Okay, assignment time. Today's assignment is going to be a spiritual continuation of day 13's image inspirations. Except with this time, we're going to be a little bit more specific. This time, what I want you to do is select 5 photographers who have styles that you absolutely love, that you absolutely adore. Now, with those 5 photographers, I want you to grab their images, a selection of them, and make a mood board. And then put these images up somewhere you can see them collectively. And then I want you to write out a few things. Write out the answer to: how would you describe this style to someone else? What are the traits of this style that you can see? What specific traits of the style are things that you could see yourself integrating into your own work and trying out? Now, this may be more difficult than it sounds, and it does take a little bit of time to develop the vocabulary to succinctly and accurately describe certain traits of a style, but try it out for now and see how you go. And if you feel like it, feel free to share your answers in the comments section for this lesson for everyone else to see as well. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.